Well, hello, welcome back to the channel. It has been far too long since we've done a video. It has been so busy. So it is Sunday afternoon. I'm going to try to make this batch of cookies, get this video edited and posted in time for what we would like to be our normal Monday posting schedule. So wish me luck. If you're watching this and today is not October the 19th and this wasn't posted on October the 19th, I have missed my goal. So just a fun little goal for myself. So I'm going to be making some molasses cookies out of Rosie's Baking Basics. This is a really excellent book if you are new to baking. It does a really good job explaining how to make the recipes with a lot of really excellent pictures to really step you through it. A lot of times, a book will say, do this to the dough, turn the dough that way when the dough looks like this. But this book actually does a great job of showing you all those things. The pictures really do a lot to show you the technique. So I'm gonna crack on with making this batch of molasses cookies. If you've never had molasses cookies, they're not dissimilar to a regular sugar cookie, but they're much darker in color down to the molasses, and the molasses adds a deepness, sort of a richness to the flavor that you don't get from just white sugar. It's even more so than you would get from brown sugar. Brown sugar can add like a butterscotch sort of flavor, but this molasses goes much, much deeper than that. So that's what we're gonna start with. Now, the only downside to this recipe, though it is absolutely worth it, is you do need to brown the butter before you make the cookies. So the first step is to get the butter. I'm gonna measure it out into this pan, and then I will melt the butter on the stove and brown the butter, and then we have to kind of cool that butter back down. So that is the plan, that is the goal. And this recipe makes 24 2 3/4 inch cookies, kind of, a normal cookie size. I'm going to quadruple this recipe. So come along with me while I fail to do math properly, and hopefully at the end, we'll have a really great batch of cookies. So the recipe calls for 150 grams of unsalted butter. I have salted butter. Oftentimes, baking recipes will call for unsalted butter, and if we don't have any on hand, we will just take a little bit of salt away from the recipe later on. So I'm gonna zero out my scale, and so 150 grams is 600 grams when I quadruple this recipe. So each stick of butter is a little bit over 100 grams, it's about 113. 226, very consistent. Glad to see Land O'Lakes is very consistent in their butter making. Just using a standard American style butter, not a European butter with the higher butter fat content. 339, so I'm gonna take off just a little bit. $295. So this is actually 308 grams. I actually prefer to go a little bit high at this stage because I'm gonna melt it in this pot, and then I'm gonna transfer it to a measuring cup for when I make the recipe later. And that means that after everything is kind of scraped out and everything else, I'm probably gonna lose a couple of grams, but I'll still be right on the money. So let's get this over on the stove. It's really the bubbles that are going to tell you when it's ready. At first you get like a really dense disc of very fine bubbles. Then the bubbles get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they sort of dissipate, and then you go back to these really fine bubbles, but in a much thinner layer. It's when you get to that second round of very thin bubbles that the proteins and the milk solids are starting to brown. So as soon as you start to get to that point, be pretty careful because the browning happens pretty quickly. And so what you're looking for is this. It's essentially one step past clarified butter. And it's a little bit hard to see here with this kind of a disc at the bottom of those brown butter solids. It smells incredible while it cooks. The brown butter, as it starts to brown, just explodes with this incredible nutty flavor, this really rich nutty flavor. And that's also how you can know that you're getting very close. So that part is done, and this is cooled down. You want it to be sort of close to body temperature, maybe you're a little bit less. But for us, it's not super critical. If you're going to make these cookies and bake them immediately, it's pretty important to get this butter temperature right. But as you know, what we're going to do is we're going to make the cookies, we're going to scoop the cookies and freeze the cookies. So we're not too worried about that right now. So I have all the other ingredients here mapped out. To save myself a little bit of trouble of doing the math wrong again on camera, I've pre-measured everything out at the 4x quantity. The only thing I've done that's a little bit funky is the eggs. I've actually used 4 eggs instead of sort of the percentage of egg that she specifies. The only reason I did that is because these are eggs from our chickens, and these eggs are a little bit smaller than normal anyway, so I have kind of 2 small eggs and 1 largish egg, and the total of egg comes very close to what I need for the recipe, so that's fine. Right, so I put the molasses directly into the mixing bowl of the mixer. If you've ever worked with molasses before, it makes honey seem like a totally non-sticky substance. It's very thick and it's very sticky, so I poured it right from the jar directly in here with it on my scale, just so I got that number just right. So I have the molasses in the bowl, and we're going to mix the brown butter with its solids, the sugar, the molasses, and the eggs on low speed for a minute. So this brown butter is liquid gold, so you don't want to leave a single ounce of the solids behind. So I'm actually going to pull my bowl right out, my stand mixer, and you can see the molasses in there. And I'm going to try to get every last bit out of this container. So you see I poured out the butter, and at the bottom there's still this brown disc. And that brown disc is those butter solids. So let's get that in. And the recipe says to use the beater attachment for your stand mixer. As we've talked about in previous videos, we use this Bosch mixer, and this stand mixer's beater attachment looks kind of like a real heavy-duty whisk. So that is what's attached. I'm going to reattach the bowl. We're going to get the egg incorporated. And the sugar, I believe. I'm definitely going to want this on there. So stand mixer's on, I'm just going to start on low. You can see as it starts to get a little bit more incorporated, it starts to go a lighter color and a bit airy. It takes on like a homogeneous, thick look. So that's looking pretty good. The next thing that we need to do is we need to combine the flour with the salt and the baking soda. So I've pre-measured that out. I'm going to add that here. And in Rosie's recipe, she also requests some spices. She says that you need cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. What we're going to use instead is this Baker's Spice blend. We just like the Spice and Tea Exchange. We have a local shop not too far from us in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And we think this smells really great. It tastes really great. And it has all of those spices in it. And it also has a little bit of cardamom, some star anise, and a little bit of allspice as well. So the recipe calls for a little more than 2 tablespoons of combined spice, so I'm going to pop that in there. I always find that more spice is better than not enough spice, and so I don't mind if my measurement is a little bit heavy. Yeah, so you want to be kind of quick. She says add the flour to the mixture, start mixing on the lowest speed to moisten the flour, and then raise the speed to low. So let's see what we can do if I start with everything in here. So this could get a little bit messy, so we're going to start real slow. That's pretty much it. It's pretty well combined. Definitely on the thicker side. So I'm going to lift this out. Get the beater attachment removed. Try to get all that delicious molasses cookie dough off that beater. And if we take a quick look, yeah, this is pretty well mixed. There's nothing stuck to the bottom. It's all pretty well incorporated, and it smells incredible. This molasses cookie dough is just, it smells great from the word go. I guess that's it's a benefit of liking how molasses smells, I suppose. So this is looking great. It's a little bit loose. It's going to be really tough to scoop. That's part of the butter being melted means you get a pretty wet dough. So I'm going to kind of flatten this down a little bit, and I'm going to pop this in the fridge probably for half an hour. And once this firms up a little bit, we will scoop all those cookies. See you then. So the cookies have been chilled. I don't know how long they've been in the fridge. Maybe an hour, yeah. So we're going to scoop off a few so that we can bake them and eat them because they're delicious. It smells incredible. But what you want to do is scoop the cookies, roll them in a little bit of sugar, and then put them on the baking tray. It just helps give them kind of a crunch on the outside. Rose says that you should bake these cookies for about 8 to 10 minutes, 4 minutes, and then rotate. As ever, we're going to cook them in the toaster oven, so we'll probably cook them for roughly that amount of time, but the cookies that come out of the freezer are going to need probably 14, maybe up to 18 minutes from frozen, but these cookies that are just chilled shouldn't take that long. They will kind of rise and spread when they're baking, and they tend to come up, and then they collapse, and that's when I like to pull them. I think it gives like a really chewy cookie, but you can pull them sooner than that, or if you let them cook for a few more minutes longer than that, they become more crisp. But I like them to be pretty fudgy. So I'm going to scoop some cookies. We're just using our trusty scoop. This is the same scoop we use for basically all of our cookies. And our little tray here, we're going to try to squeeze 8 cookies. This is actually a lot easier to scoop than a lot of cookie doughs because there are no chunks in this. It's just the cookie dough batter, so you're not trying to get around chocolate chips and bits of walnut and things like that. 6, 7. Do you want to go for the full 9?
Might as well. I'll eat it. I have no problems.
So these will spread. So these cookies are probably going to bump into each other while they bake a little bit, but we're just baking for ourselves here. And in total, so Rose's recipe makes 24 cookies of this size, and since we quadrupled it, we should get just shy of 100. So I'm going to pop...
I missed a set.
Gotta get some more sugar. I'm gonna pop these in the oven, and hopefully we'll be mostly done scooping by the time they come out. So just like you've seen us do before, we're gonna scoop everything, and we're gonna put them into zip top bags, pre-scooped, and put them right in the freezer, so that whenever we want a cookie, you just kind of break off a little scoop and pop it in the toaster oven. You don't want to sugar them now.
Right. I'll eat them.
No, it's fine. Yeah, if you want.
That's it.
Done? Here we go. So we've got about 70 for the freezer. And about 85 cookies in total. And so there you go. A wonderful looking batch of delicious molasses cookies. They're all kind of touching their little friends there. But you get these sort of cracks on top. So I hope you enjoyed, and I don't know, we'll see how the evening goes. This should post on the 19th. Let me know what day you noticed it on.